While cleaning the top floor office of her ruthless CEO, a cleaning lady stumbles upon a secret that could completely destroy his career. But instead of exposing him, she decides to use it to get to know the man behind the mask. This is the story of how a hidden manuscript turned into a romance jackpot. In the heart of a city, the Stirling Tower shot into the sky, a monument of glass and steel. It was a testament to the ambition of one man, Alistair Stirling. To the world, and especially to his employees, Alistair wasn't just a man, he was a force of nature. They called him the Stirling Shark, a predator in a bespoke suit who'd carved out his empire with ruthless precision. His office on the 80th floor was his inner sanctum, a sterile, silent space overlooking the city he'd conquered. But every night, long after the expensive shoes had gone home, another person entered this kingdom. Her name was Alara, and she was the cleaning lady. To a man like Alistair Stirling, she was invisible, just a uniform, a shadow that erased the day's traces. But all that was about to change, because in the silence of that glass castle, Alara was about to find the one secret the man who had everything was desperate to hide. Alara's life was a world away from the gleaming facade of Stirling Tower. Her reality was the quiet hum of a floor polisher, the sharp smell of cleaning supplies, and the constant nagging ache in her back. She moved through the world on tired feet, her day beginning when everyone else's was ending. Every night, she took 2 buses and a train to reach the city's financial district, a ghost haunting the halls of corporate power. This wasn't the life she'd dreamed of. Years ago, she was a promising literature student, her mind buzzing with poetry and grand stories. Her own notebooks were filled with half-finished tales and sketches of characters who lived lives far more exciting than her own. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Her mother's illness called for expensive treatments and constant care, forcing Alara to drop out of school and put her own dreams on hold. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders, and the world of books was replaced by a world of buckets and brooms. Still, she never lost that part of herself that saw stories everywhere. As she cleaned, she'd invent lives for the people whose desks she wiped down. The woman with the photo of a golden retriever, a weekend hiker. The man with the worn-out stress ball, secretly training for a marathon. It was a small, silent game she played to keep her imagination from flickering out. Of all the floors in Stirling Tower, the 80th was the most intimidating. It belonged to Alistair Stirling alone. The space was a perfect reflection of him, cold, minimalist, and designed to impress. A vast mahogany desk stood like an altar in the center of the room, always perfectly clear except for a single state-of-the-art monitor. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a godlike view of the city, but it felt less like an appreciation of beauty and more like a declaration of ownership. Alara had never really met Mr. Stirling. She'd only seen him from a distance, a tall, imposing figure with sharp gray eyes and a jaw that looked like it was carved from granite. She had, however, seen his ruthlessness up close. One evening, as she was starting her shift, she saw a young executive getting out of the elevator with a cardboard box in his hands. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. Her coworker, Maria, just shook her head. Mr. Stirling found a rounding error in his quarterly report, less than $100, fired him on the spot. No severance, just out. The story sent a shiver down Alara's spine. Alistair Stirling demanded perfection and offered zero mercy. He was the king of this castle, and his reign was absolute. Alara learned to be extra careful on his floor, to leave no trace, to be as invisible as the air. His world wasn't meant for people like her. She was just there to make sure its pristine surface stayed perfect. The night Alara's world turned upside down started like any other. A furious autumn storm was lashing the city, the rain hammering against the windows of the 80th floor. The sound was a dull roar that made her feel completely cut off from the world below. It was well past midnight. She worked with her usual quiet efficiency, her movements practiced and silent, as she dusted the bookshelves filled with imposing titles on market strategy and hostile takeovers. As she moved to a corner of the office, near some built-in cabinets, she noticed something odd. One of the lower drawers, a wide, flat one she knew was almost always locked, was slightly ajar. It was a tiny flaw in the room's perfect order, and it immediately set her on edge. Her first instinct was to just push it shut and forget she ever saw it. Curiosity was a luxury she couldn't afford. But something stopped her. A sliver of dark leather peeked out from under a rolled-up blueprint. It didn't look like a corporate document. It looked too soft, too personal. Her hand trembled as she pulled the drawer open a few more inches. There, tucked in the back like it had been hidden in a hurry, was a handsome leather-bound manuscript. No company logo, no cold corporate font. The cover was blank, but the pages inside were thick with text. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was wrong. She shouldn't be doing this. She should close the drawer and walk away. But the storm raged outside, and the silence in the office was suddenly buzzing with a question she couldn't ignore. Her fingers, as if they had a mind of their own, reached out and gently lifted the manuscript. It was heavy. The title, handwritten on the first page in an elegant, almost severe script, read, "Echoes in the Silence." She read the first line, then the second. The writing was stunning, not the dry, analytical language of a CEO, but the rich, evocative words of a poet. It was the story of a man living in self-imposed exile, a man who commanded a kingdom but was desperately, achingly lonely, a man who watched the world from a high tower, seeing everything and feeling nothing, until he met a woman who saw not the king, but the prisoner inside the castle. Ilara sank to her knees, forgetting her cleaning cart, forgetting the time. She read on, turning page after page, completely captivated. The writing was filled with a raw, unguarded vulnerability. It spoke of secret longings, of a deep-seated fear of being unworthy of love, of a soul that felt fractured and hidden behind a mask of unbreakable strength. It was beautiful, tragic, and deeply romantic. Then she saw it, a passage describing the main character's view from his window, the way the lights of the city's bridges were strung together like a fallen constellation, the exact same thought Ilara had while looking out these very windows. A shiver ran through her. A few pages later, the hero remembered a specific gnarled oak tree by a lake. Just last week, while dusting a small framed photo on a side table she'd always assumed was stock imagery, she had noticed that same tree. The photo was a personal memento. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. There was no author's name on the title page, but she didn't need one. This was Alistair Sterling's story. The Sterling Shark, the ruthless titan of industry, the man who fired people over rounding errors, was a secret writer. And not just any writer. He was a romance novelist, pouring all the emotion he so carefully hid from the world onto the page. The manuscript wasn't a document. It was a confession. It was the key to his soul, left in an unlocked drawer, and she, the invisible cleaning lady, was the only one who had found it. The discovery left Ilara completely shaken. For the next few days, her world felt different. The sterile office on the 80th floor no longer felt just intimidating, it felt lonely. The imposing figure of Alistair Sterling no longer seemed just ruthless, he seemed tragic. She was both burdened and electrified by her secret knowledge. She could ruin him. A man like Alistair, whose entire persona was built on icy control, would be destroyed if people found out he secretly wrote passionate romance novels. The media would have a field day. But the thought of blackmail never crossed her mind. Exposing him would feel like a betrayal, not of an employer, but of the artist who had written those beautiful, vulnerable words. Instead, a different, quieter, more daring idea began to form. What if she could connect not with the CEO, but with the writer? What if she could let the man behind the mask know that someone had hurt him? Her first attempt was subtle. In the manuscript, the hero often found comfort in a specific, rare blend of oolong tea. The detail was described so lovingly that Ilara knew it had to be a personal favorite. The next night, after a careful search in a specialty tea shop, she brought a single, perfect, hand-rolled tea leaf to work. After cleaning his desk, her heart pounding, she placed the solitary leaf on the polished surface right next to his keyboard where he couldn't possibly miss it. It was a whisper in the echoing silence of his office. When Alistair arrived the next morning, he saw the leaf immediately.
He stopped, confused. It was elegant, fragrant, and completely out of place. He figured it was a weird piece of lint and brushed it into the trash, annoyed by the imperfection. But the image of it stuck with him. Undeterred, Alara decided to try again. A week later, she left her next clue. The main character in Echoes in the Silence was haunted by a line from a John Keats poem, "A thing of beauty is a joy forever." That night, Alara found a small, plain sticky note. In her neatest print, she wrote the 4 words, "A joy forever." She didn't stick it to his monitor. Instead, she opened a thick business manual on his shelf and tucked the note inside, a tiny piece of poetry hidden in the prose of profit. This time, the effect was immediate. Alistair was looking for something in that very book when the small yellow square fluttered out. He stared at the words, "A joy forever." It wasn't just a random quote, it was his quote, the one from the book, the one that no one on earth knew mattered to him. A cold dread washed over him, followed by a hot surge of paranoia. Who was in his office? Who had access to his innermost thoughts? He immediately suspected corporate espionage. He spent the afternoon reviewing security footage, watching hours of tape, seeing nothing but the silent, methodical movements of the night shift cleaning lady. She was beneath suspicion. He dismissed the footage, more agitated than ever. He started staying late, pretending to work, but really he was waiting. He had to catch the ghost who was leaving these messages. One night, he set a trap. He packed his briefcase at his usual time, walked to the elevator, and then slipped into an unused storage closet that had a sliver of a view into his office. He waited in the dark, his heart thudding with anxiety and anticipation. An hour later, the office door opened and Alara entered. He watched her. He had never really looked at her before. He saw the weariness in her posture, but also the quiet dignity in her movements. He saw her pause at the window, her gaze fixed on the city with a wistful longing he knew intimately. It was the same expression he gave his fictional hero. His paranoia slowly melted into deep curiosity. As she neared the cabinets where the manuscript was hidden, his breath caught. He saw her hand hesitate near the drawer. Just then, his phone buzzed in his pocket, the vibrations startlingly loud in the silent closet. He fumbled to silence it, knocking a small box off a shelf. It clattered to the floor. Alara jumped, her eyes wide with fear. She glanced around nervously, then quickly gathered her things and finished her work in a rush. She was gone in minutes, leaving Alistair alone in the dark, his heart racing not with fear, but with the thrill of the near miss. He was no longer hunting a spy. He was captivated by the mystery of the cleaning lady. He couldn't wait any longer. The next night, he confronted her. He sat at his desk in the dark, the room lit only by the glow of the city lights. When Alara arrived, she gasped, dropping her spray bottle. "Mr. Sterling," she stammered. I didn't know you were here." He rose slowly from his chair, a tall silhouette against the window. His voice wasn't angry. It was low, controlled, but humming with an intensity that was more unnerving than any shout.
The next morning, the boardroom was thick with tension. The board members were ready to surrender to Thorne's offer. Alistair Sterling walked in, not with his usual arrogance, but with a quiet confidence they'd never seen before. He looked human. He didn't use a PowerPoint. He didn't hand out binders. He just stood before them and started to speak. He spoke of legacy, of his flaws, of the isolation at the top. Then, using the very themes and phrases Alara had helped him pull from his own secret novel, he painted a new vision for the company, one based on integrity and purpose, not just profit. He spoke with a passion so raw and authentic it left the room in stunned silence. He wasn't the Sterling shark anymore. He was a leader. When he finished, there was a long pause. Then the eldest board member, one of his harshest critics, slowly began to clap. One by one, the others joined in. The hostile takeover was dead. They were voting for the new Alistair Sterling. That night, Alara arrived on the 80th floor. The office was clean. Alistair was waiting for her by the window. The power dynamic between them had been rebuilt into something new. There was no longer a CEO and a cleaning lady, just two people. "They listened," he said, turning to her with a small, genuine smile. "Thank you, Alara."
He didn't offer her money or a hollow promotion. He offered her something far more valuable. He walked to the cabinet, retrieved the leather-bound manuscript, and held it out to her. "I was never going to let anyone read this," he said softly. "I was too afraid. But you already have. I was wondering if you would be willing to read it again, not as a secret you discovered, but as my editor, as my friend. I'd like to know what you really think." Ilara looked from the manuscript to the hopeful expression in his eyes. In that moment, she knew her life would never be the same. She had come to this office to erase the traces of the day, but instead she had helped its owner find a new beginning. She took the manuscript, her fingers brushing his. It was a promise. The days that followed were a quiet revolution. The story of the CEO's sudden transformation became office legend, but only two people knew the real reason why. Alistair publicly announced a new role for Ilara. To everyone's shock, he created a new creative ventures division to invest in arts and literature, and he named Ilara its head consultant. He explained that she'd been privately advising him for some time, her unique insights proving invaluable. It was just plausible enough to work. Ilara, the woman who had lived in the shadows, now had an office with her own view. Their professional collaborations soon bled into their personal time. Evenings were no longer about her cleaning his office, but sitting together in his vast home library, the manuscript for echoes in the silence open between them. They debated characters and polished sentences. He discovered the aspiring writer in her, reading her half-finished stories with the same reverence she had given his. In that cozy, book-lined room, the last walls between them crumbled. He wasn't a CEO, and she wasn't a cleaning lady. They were Alistair and Ilara, two storytellers who had found each other in the most unlikely way. The ruthless boss had found his heart, and the cleaning lady had found her voice. She had come looking for a paycheck, but walked away with a romance jackpot, a partnership of equals, a shared future, and a love story better than anything either of them could have written alone. Ilara didn't just clean an office, she polished the soul of the man inside it. It just goes to show you that the greatest jackpots aren't about money, but about understanding and having the courage to see what lies beneath the surface. Her discovery of a hidden manuscript unlocked not just a secret, but a destiny for them both. If you love this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who appreciates an unexpected connection. Let us know in the comments, what hidden talent do you think has the power to change a person's life? We'd love to hear your thoughts.